And then we have the light conditions.
Yeah.
Since we're so far north, the sun doesn't come up properly until like 9 in the morning.
And it's overcast. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been here for 4 days and I haven't seen the sun once.
Oh yeah, no, that can happen. Like you can go weeks without even seeing the sun because it's overcast.
You don't need a complicated reticle because you're not shooting far. In fact, the simpler the better.
Yeah.
You need illumination.
Yes.
You need good light transmission.
Yeah.
When it's raining and when it's, when you get mud and,
Yeah.
those things don't often happen where I'm from. So I have a fresh understanding of what the requirements are of a European hunter, and it's made me appreciate the needs of different markets a lot more.
Yeah, here we go. And in the blue car.
Welcome back to the Element Optics podcast. I'm Matt Dubber. This is Henric. We're in Sweden, and we have just had an amazing hunt yesterday, filmed for the Element Optics Global Hunting Series, which you can find on YouTube. And in this one, we're going to basically be talking about hunting, but approaching it from the viewpoint of what hunting is like in different parts of the world. Obviously, Henric's from Sweden. I'm from South Africa. Very different terrain, very different weather. That not only affects how we hunt, but also the equipment that we need.
Yeah.
So maybe to start off, why don't we talk about, how we got into hunting, our introductions to what hunting is and what we think of when we hear of hunting and what our experiences have been in general before we visited other places, and then we can talk about what your experience was like in South Africa.
Oh yeah.
And I'll run through what I experienced here in Sweden and what I found different and interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, to start off, I'm Henrik. I grew up in Sweden. I started hunting. Well, I came with my dad when I was a kid, and just going out to the woods was exciting for me. And as I grew up, I started shooting a 10-meter air rifle. That was like my first interaction with guns. And then I moved up when I think it was 12 or 13. I sat in my dad's lap with my Sauer 202 that I still have, that we hunted with yesterday, and I shot my first roe deer. And that was an amazing feeling. And then just as I grew up, I kept on hunting, and then we've done a lot of driven hunts with my dad. So I used to just walk around with him. It wasn't that much sitting still. And then I shot elk and deer and all kinds of fox. So I've done a big variety of hunting but mostly in Sweden, except the one trip that we did to South Africa last year.
It's funny you mentioned 10-meter air rifle because that's what got me into more competitive shooting. And so I'm from a part of the world down in the Eastern Cape of South Africa where there's so many hunting opportunities and so many people own like private land in the area that when I was growing up, all my friends would go home to their farms where they live, and they'd go hunt with their parents. I mean, like young boys learning how to hunt, and I never grew up with those opportunities until I was a bit older. But I was always interested in guns and the technical side of guns. And funnily enough, I actually wanted, when I was young, I recognized that I wanted to be involved in some sort of product development in the gun industry, which is what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. But yeah, so hunting for us has always been the experience of like going out to somewhere very wild, harvesting an animal, and there's all the sort of like rituals that go with that, like eating the piece of the liver of your first animal, getting a bit of blood on your face, and the excitement. It's a lot of it is it's like a father and son thing. So a lot of dads will take their sons hunting, and that's like a bonding thing for them.
Yeah, I can. That was very much so for me as well.
Yeah.
As growing up, it was something me and my dad did. My brother wasn't really fond of hunting. He did, he played the guitar instead.
Yeah.
But for me, it turned out to be hunting that I wanted to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, a lot of people, I guess anywhere in the world, start off hunting with their father's rifle, for example, and then that gets handed down to them.
Yeah.
And that's what they use. And a lot of those rifles are from a generation where you have a very sort of traditional cartridge, like let's say 308 or 270 over here. The 6.5 Swedish Mausers, very popular.
Yeah, still.
And you get that. You choose a normal generic hunting bullet, and you kind of know, okay, this distance is going to drop here, this distance is going to drop here.
Yeah,
but a lot of people don't get into the technical side of understanding like how to push it a bit further.
Yeah.
And so the style of hunting for most people, or how they learned growing up, especially our generation, would be, you taught you want to get within, let's say like 100 to 200 meters, so that you don't have to think about how much your drop is. You just, you hold.
In Sweden, I think it's even closer than that.
Even closer, yeah.
Yeah, because we're not like, we don't have those great distances when we hunt. Like normally, I mean, my first road air, that was like 70, 80 meters or something.
Yeah.
That's like, we don't really push too much to fall over that, because, European style hunting are normally very simple crosshairs, reticle, and then you have capped turrets and all that. You have a illuminated dot, maybe not even illumination. So you zero your rifle at very short distances, normally like 50 meters or 75 or something like that. Normally not 100. So you don't even push those distances, but it also has to do with the terrain, because normally, in the woods where we normally hunt, we don't shoot over a lot of open plains, maybe a field or so, but normally we don't stretch the distance too much. I've only seen that, as in the later years when people go into the more technical aspect of it, they start, with the turrets or using a BDC reticle or something like that. But I haven't seen that. Like for me growing up, that was not the technical part in ballistics and that stuff. That wasn't there at all for me.
Yeah.
That got to me when I got into the army, basically.
And I think it's safe to say that for most European hunters, because of the terrain you're in, where you don't have to push the limits on distance, you don't have to stalk particularly well to get within 150 meters, for example. The need for understanding ballistics is less prevalent, and the need for good equipment that is weather resistant and helps you to see stuff well in dense brush is more important. And we'll get to how the terrain and lighting and style of hunting affects the choice of optics. But it's interesting that 6.5 by 55 is so popular here, because that's actually a brilliant long-range cartridge. As far as
it is,
it's an old factory cartridge, but for probably like 50 to 100 years, it was like probably the best available long-range cartridge. Like as a factory cartridge, it can perform extremely well. Yeah. So it's interesting that most people probably haven't used that as far as it's capable.
No, exactly.
Capable of being used.
Yeah, they probably only used a fraction of its capabilities.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting. But yeah, in South Africa, I started, because we can only get a firearms license when we're 21. I got into 10-meter air rifle. Then I got into air rifle hunting, and because it's an air rifle, and because everything's a bit more open in South Africa and not so dense, I had to learn the ballistic side of it and learn how bullet drop, ballistic coefficient, creating a ballistic profile, how wind drift, and how everything works. And that interest got transferred over to centerfire rifle hunting, and I found that has made me a much better hunter in my terrain. Yeah. Because, as you know, you've been to South Africa, it's very different. It's you get up early, but you get up early to avoid the heat.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're hunting in broad daylight. Yeah. Let's say from sunrise to like 10, 11 o'clock, but it's bright. There's no like need for illuminated reticle or any of that.
No.
And it's all about identifying an animal. It might be sitting on a hill.
Yeah.
and glassing, finding the animal that you want. It's open terrain very easily. So you find what you want, and then it's either a case of strategizing a stalk to get within whatever range you're comfortable. Normally 200 to 350 meters is what most shots end up at. For the less experienced guys with ballistics, or if you don't have a steady rest, you can get closer. But often if you try and get too close, the animal disappears.
Oh yeah, because they're very scarce. Yeah.
So there's a huge benefit to having knowledge about how your gun works, to being able to dial your turrets, to have a good rangefinder. And I'd say rangefinders have changed the whole game. Because
of course.
Before a laser rangefinder, it's all about, okay, I cannot estimate that shot well enough to guess what the drop is. So I have to stalk in close. You know, the bullet availability also, there weren't these sleek long-range bullets with high BC.
No, exactly.
So you have to stalk in close, and things are changing a bit.
Yeah.
But because in Europe the terrain is so thick, you don't even get opportunity for a long shot.
No, exactly. It might be if you're at the field or something, but then also since you basically never take those shots, you're not really comfortable stretching the distance either, and then you also might not have the right equipment to do so. If you're using a very simple reticle cap turrets, you're not used to ballistic, then you felt like, oh no, that's too far, and then you don't want to, it's
exactly.
So you might not even get the opportunity. So it's different type of hunting in the northern part of Sweden. They hunt birds that sit on top of trees. Then they can't get close. So then that's a different type. But if we're talking like more southern part of Sweden or the more traditional type hunting, you basically don't stretch the distance too far. Like of course it varies between experience and so forth. So I'm not going to say not everyone, but in general you don't shoot at long distances.
And another thing I noticed is because it's so thick. I mean, okay, the snow when we hunted yesterday made it easier for us to follow a blood trail. Yeah. But let's say there's no snow, you wound an animal, it runs into a thick forest. Yeah, that's much harder to find than, let's say, you wound an animal in South Africa and it can run 100 meters and you can just watch it the whole way.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So that takes a bit of pressure off of us in terms of the risk of losing an animal. For us, it's if you can put it on the heart and lung area. Yeah. Even if you just nick the lung, it's gonna go down within 100 meters or so. Yeah. And that's a very safe shot to take. And the emphasis for South Africans is very much meat hunting. Yeah. So you want to. You don't want to take off the shoulder with a Magnum cartridge. You'd rather take heart and lung. And I know Europe's the same, where it's you're not trying to blow the thing up. You're trying to put in an ethical shot, but you want to save the meat. And I think there's a lot of similarities in the respect for the animal. Oh yeah, between our cultures. Yeah, hunting, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, of course, it's very ethical, and in terms of what animal you shoot and. All that kind of, like I remember from our very, like when I was a kid, there was a lot of emphasis was on the animal should not suffer anything more than it has to. You should like, if you're not sure about your shot, like you shouldn't take the shot. Like you don't regret a shot you don't take. So
exactly, I think a lot of people think that when a hunter gets that like excitement and elation after putting in a good shot, that it's like that person just loves killing stuff.
Oh yeah, no.
But it's not. It's a relief that the animal didn't have to suffer.
Exactly.
It's a satisfaction of I was able to put in a good shot that didn't wound it.
And it's also a relief of all the excitement building up to it. When you spot the animal, you maybe go on a stalk, all that. It just builds up, and then you're able to do a clean shot, and everything went well. That's wow. You get that rush. It feels really good. Yeah. So that's a big part of the hunting, the excitement, and you see the animal, you do the stalk, and then also you can get that excitement without even have to take the shot. Of course, that's what you want to get the animal, but you can also get that just doing a stalk, even though you don't succeed, because a lot of, like, as every hunter knows, you're not always going out and getting a good hunt, lucky hunt, where sometimes you even go out and don't even see any animals. Yeah. So, but that's part of it.
Still, you can still go home feeling like you're full.
Yeah, because
you don't shoot something.
a big part is also, you know, being out with people you like and being out in the woods, just being outside, you know, moving around, all that, being out in nature. It can just a lot of beautiful moments.
Yeah. So let's discuss the weather, the lighting, and the terrain, and what a typical European hunt looks like. You can go into even more detail with Scandinavia in general, but let's broadly talk about Europe. And for the American guys listening or watching, we could probably say that there's a big overlap between European hunting and Eastern US hunting, where it's a little bit thicker. You're going after white-tailed deer. The underlying skill requirements and equipment requirements are relatively similar. Whereas what I'm used to in South Africa is probably a bit closer to Western US hunting. So for the guys who feel like they're left out because we're not talking about America, I think there's probably a lot of similarities and a lot of stuff to learn. And we use those similarities when developing the Helix HD and Helix HLR, which we'll go into a lot more detail on in a different podcast, telling the story of how we develop those scopes. But let's talk about European hunting and what a typical weather, terrain, temperature.
So normally the hunting season is basically between August till February normally for the bigger game, and August is normally pretty nice, but then it turns pretty quickly. September, October turns pretty cold, and I'd say the main portion of the hunting season is October to February basically, because we have some different time restrictions on when you're allowed to hunt some animals. But I guess that's pretty common all around the world. But October, normally no snow in the southern part where I hunt. Getting cold, wet, all the leaves fall off the trees. Like you normally need a raincoat when going out, just in case, because the weather can change pretty quickly. It's not below zero outside, but it's still cold. So normally you have a lot of clothing on when going out, and then as the snow actually, depending on what type of hunting you do, the snow can help you or work against you. Because if you're doing a stalk, just having the snow on your feet, they adhere so well. It's very hard to stalk then. But on the other hand, if you shoot an animal, you can easily follow a blood trail, or you can see, fresh prints in the snow that you can kind of locate where the animals are. Because if it's snow outside, they like to, move into the forest on the day and then just lie down to conserve energy, because there's very sparse supply of food. So they try to not, move around too much to burn too much energy. So it's pros and cons with the snow. But if you want to stalk, it's easier to do without it. And then we have the light conditions. Since we're so far north, the sun doesn't come up like December as it is now. The sun doesn't come up properly until like 9 in the morning, 9 a.m. And then it goes back down at 3:30 p.m. So you got a pretty short window of the day where you actually can hunt in daylight.
And it's overcast. I mean, I've been here for 4 days and I haven't seen the sun once.
Oh yeah, no, that can happen. Like you can go weeks without even seeing the sun because it's overcast, and then like you can go to work in the morning, it's dark, and when you go out, it's dark. So it's pretty miserable sometimes. But those days in winter when it's snow out and the sun actually comes out and you're out in the forest, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I have to confess, I was quite critical of many European scope manufacturers, feeling like they were stuck in the past by making like capped turret scopes with simple reticles. But I understand now that I've been here why. You don't need a complicated reticle because you're not shooting far. In fact, the simpler the better. You need illumination. You need good light transmission. And you need and the cap turrets help with weatherproofing. You don't have to have them capped, but
Yeah.
when it's raining and when it's, when you get mud and,
Yeah.
like Peter fell through the ice and got
Yeah.
his equipment covered in ice and snow.
Yeah.
Those things don't often happen where I'm from. So I have a fresh understanding of what the requirements are of a European hunter, and it's made me appreciate the needs of different markets a lot more.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a very big difference to what we did when we were in South Africa, and the terrain is also very different to like where we were. It was very mountainous, but here it's a thick forest. It's not as we have some open fields, and it's a very different way of hunting. We don't glass as much. You can, like in the mornings, you can see the animals are out on the fields trying to scrape through the snow and eat something, and then when they go back into the forest, you can't see them. When we're in South Africa, you had to go around, and you have to glass and see up on top of the other side of the mountains or stuff like that. Then you can find the animal, you can move closer. Here it's about maybe like knowledge and know where the food supply is in the winter.
Yep.
Like, on these fields we know that there's something for them to eat, then they're going to be pretty close, and then it's likely that they're there. In South Africa, they can be anywhere. Like, and you have to look for them and see them, and you can see great distances as well.
Yeah, and that even in binocular design, in Europe, the criteria would probably be something that's maybe a little bit more lightweight, but good light transmission, and being able to, if you need to look across a field and identify something, you can. But in sort of Western US and South Africa, it might be more about getting a little bit of extra magnification.
Yeah.
You might be putting it down on a tripod or resting it on a rock and trying to get identify whether an animal is like a ram or a ewe, because sometimes, like a springbuck, both the male and female have horns.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you got to look at how thick, and that requires some detail. So there's a lot of little nuances in the differences between equipment and what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
And also, how you dress, what type of camo you have, and all those things. Like what footwear do you have?
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, in South Africa, it's quite normal to find. You see some people hunting in Crocs with rugby shorts, like that. That's normal. That's very normal.
Yeah.
Very normal for us.
No, in Sweden you need proper boots. It's no
it's
matter
a
what
different
time
world.
you go out, it's going to be a bit wet when you go into the forest. You can, small streams and stuff, and you need, thick clothing actually, because it's cold. It's a Scandinavian country, so you get cold, and if you're gonna, it's okay while you move around, but as soon as you stay still, you want to get rest. And also the colors and type of camo, or just it's a big difference.
Very different.
And also types of, not only caliber, but type of rifle. We like most of the rifles are more like we moved over more towards the synthetic stocks, but before that, when I was a kid, there was wooden stocks. That was all it was, like traditional hunting rifles, just centerfire cylinder.
Talking about rifles, that's an interesting one. I remember growing up in South Africa, before the days of rangefinders, when you had to get close. Most people, and I guess the older generation now, are still in the same, still fall on the same criteria, but most people are shooting the older European rifles. Like there's a lot of Blaser, Sauer, Mauser, Musgrave, and a lot of like Rigby, the old Safari rifles are beautiful. I mean, that's an art in itself. I love looking at those, with the engraving and the attention to detail, wooden stocks. I've got my grandfather's old 303 British still.
Oh, okay.
But I've noticed that's changing quite a bit, where you're finding a lot of guys nowadays moving towards a heavier profile barrel and a slightly heavier rifle, and a more modern cartridge.
Yeah.
and even using a scope that most people would call like a long range or PRS scope
Yeah.
To hunt with.
Yeah, with exposed turrets and maybe a more a reticle that's actually useful with mill markings in. And,
Exactly. Whereas, back in the day when you only got your 3 to 9 by 40 scope with a simple duplex reticle, and you didn't have a rangefinder, you had all you had to go by was choosing a cartridge that was pretty flat shooting, like a 30-06, 270, 243, something that doesn't drop as much within that 300 meters or so.
Yeah.
And then you want it light because you got to walk to get close to it.
Yeah.
Whereas nowadays, if you can, I mean, how many 6.5 Creedmoors are there you can buy over the counter now with a heavy bullet, tons of other options too. And if you can get a rifle that's a bit more capable of shooting long range, put a bipod on it, put a scope that you can dial, even if the reticle's simple, just a dialable scope that's got reliable tracking, like, that's why one of the reasons the Helix is doing so well, because guys are saying, what can I buy that gives me that ability to, if I see something in longer range, I can dial up and shoot it, but I can still put it on a simple rifle without breaking the bank.
Yeah.
And the whole mindset of people is changing. A few years ago, we didn't have first focal plane scopes in the hunting field.
Oh yeah, no.
It never happened.
No.
That times are changing. But yeah, we're finding guys are realizing they don't have to walk as much and put themselves through as much struggle trying to close the gap on an animal that can see you long before you can see it.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where I would say like the way that I hunt in South Africa, I'm more of a shooter than a hunter. Whereas in Europe, you've got to learn how to stalk and understand the animal maybe a bit better than what
and
we
also
do.
a wind is a big factor in Sweden as well, because you might not see the animals while going through the forest. You need to take that into account. Okay, where's the wind and where am I going? So you don't put a trail of your scent all throughout the woods, because then they'll smell you and they'll just run off and you'll never see them. So that's a big thing as well when you're in the thick bush and all that, or maybe moving at the edge of a field or just something like that. You need to take the wind into account, because they might not see you, but they might smell you, because you can end up like just as we did. We were out hunting the other day. We went, at the edge of a field stalking, and then we just went around some trees, and then there they were. They were like two animals that just ran into the woods, because they were that close. So it's that can happen. So these are different things you need to take into account in that aspect as well.
Are you finding that that there are guys here getting into PRS and long range shooting who then have to have two totally separate rifles, one for hunting, one for PRS, or do you find that there are guys who kind of I can use the same rifle?
I'd say that there are guys that absolutely do that. They use the same rifle, but I also say there's a bit of a resistance in Sweden where let's say the old guard, they don't like those rifles that look like sport shooting rifles, or competition rifles with the exposed turrets and so on. But you are getting more and more people that putting silencers on and having synthetic stocks, or maybe having a scope with turrets. It's absolutely becoming more of that, but there's still, if you show up to a hunt and have a rifle that doesn't really look like a classic hunting rifle, you're gonna get some people looking a bit strange at you, and it's not. It depends on, of course, where you hunt and with the people you hunt with. But that's my what I feel, that some people are not as open-minded about that. But in my view, that's the only thing that does is making sure that you have a stock that fits you better than the old wooden stock. You have a precision rifle scope, and all these things just help you to be able to make that shot easier. Instead of having this old hunting rifle that might not fit you perfect, that gone through a generation before you, and within maybe an older scope, and it doesn't make sense to me. It's still the cartridge, it shoots the same bullets. It's just you'll be able to shoot it with a more precision if you have a better stock or a better scope or stuff like that. So to me, it just they don't like how it looks.
Yeah, the reality is if you put an old school hunting rifle in a decent stock with decent ammunition and a good scope, it will perform really well.
Yes, it will.
And the bolt action rifle hasn't changed in 100 years.
No.
So it is very much about the scope and ammunition and all that stuff.
Yep.
But what's also interesting is looking at scopes that are kind of a crossover between the two.
Yeah.
And I feel like the Helix HD and Helix HGLR are cool in that they kind of bridge the gap, and they fly under the radar where you don't get those guys frowning upon them because they are in essence pure hunting scopes, but they're pure hunting scopes that are made for specific markets. So the HD, for example, which a lot of it came from your input because of your familiarity with the European hunting market, has the cap turrets, but it doesn't mean that it can't be used at longer ranges.
Exactly.
The reticle lends itself really well to being simple, having that illumination, but allowing you to take the longer shot if you need it.
Yeah, because you have the magnification and you have the BDC part of the reticle. So as long as you know your ballistics and you've done the calibration, you can shoot and it works so well.
Plus, if you really have to dial, leave your elevation exposed.
Exactly.
And you can dial.
Yeah.
So it's really bridging the gap and not like crossing the line of being too weird for that old guard. And
no, exactly.
And then you've obviously got the HDLR, which was, the story which we'll tell another time is that we wanted to make a hunting scope, but we realized that there's no such thing as a hunting scope that works for different markets. You have to, the guys like Western US and South Africa and Australia and New Zealand need something that can shoot across that valley and reach out a bit further and have some more hold points, whereas the European guys just don't need that.
Yeah. Or either don't need it or don't not educated enough. So I think some other parts of the world are more in terms of the just hunting part are more educated because they have to be. Yeah,
it's out of necessity.
Exactly.
If you don't get it, then your hunting buddy who's come with you is going to get the animal much easier because he understands it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And I'm learning. Whereas in the past, I would be very happy to take a long range PRS scope and pop it on my hunting rifle. I'm learning to appreciate the subtlety of a scope that just has enough for me to. Yeah. It's not too much.
No.
And there's something beautiful about the ability to design something that isn't over-engineered and hasn't got. I mean, if you don't need a 34 millimeter scope for that extra elevation travel, then you're carrying extra weight that you don't need.
Exactly.
If you don't need a very thick exposed turrets with 12 mils per revolution for your hunting, then once again you're carrying extra weight and it's
and the size
extra
of it
bulk
as well.
And extra cost to make it.
Yeah.
Whereas the little turrets on a Helix HD and HDLR, you get the same tracking performance basically.
Yeah.
And it's still going to do the job, but it's lighter, smaller. It's not a PRS scope, but for hunting, it's exactly what you need.
Exactly.
And I've really enjoyed that journey of learning about the different styles of hunting, and I'm sure you guys in the US have experienced similar. Maybe coming from let's say somewhere in the east and coming out to like Utah or Wyoming or something and doing a pronghorn or elk hunt, and it's just so different to what you grew up with.
Yeah.
And you're seeing that in the US too, where a lot of guys on the East Coast will use hand-me-down 270s or 308s or 243s, whereas the guys in the West are pushing new cartridges like the 6.8 Western and the 7mm PRC and like trying to get that little bit of extra advantage when getting that tag that you've been waiting for your whole life.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
you want the best possible equipment, and you don't care what it costs, or you want to make sure that you got the best possible equipment to get that animal down.
Maybe we should talk some about the way on how you get access to hunting grounds, because that can differ a lot. Like you mentioned tags in America, you get different tags, but in Sweden, you either own your own land or you can take a lease. But normally you take a lease with a bigger group of hunters, because normally it's pretty expensive, so you share the cost. And then for a specific piece of land, and you can either take the lease from the government or a landowner that either doesn't hunt himself or have a too big piece of land to be able to maintain the hunting by himself. Because at some areas there's so many animals, so if you just let them be, they will be they can go out in the fields and destroy the for the farmers. Or stuff like that. So you might need to keep some of the animals at a certain level of how many they can be in a certain area and stuff like that. So I think that is pretty different depending on where you are in the world. Because in South Africa, it's not public
it's all
land.
private. South Africa is all private land.
Exactly.
So we, if we want to hunt something, unless you are someone who culls animals for a living and you get a contract with the government to go cull animals in like a national park or something, it's all private land, and you'll have to know someone on that property and get permission to hunt there. We do need hunting licenses, but it's like a $1 piece of paper that you just you get once a year. You just write your name down on it, and then you that gives you permission to go out to private land, get permission from the landowner, and then take out animals. And normally the way it works is unless the landowner gives you permission or needs animals culled or something, normally it's a case of each animal has a value on a price list, and you choose what you want to shoot, and you pay for that animal. And most of the time you can take the meat home, take it to a butchery, get it processed, and get yourself lots of great venison that will last you months. So it's very different. I know the US is kind of a mix of private land, public land. Same when I was in New Zealand, I experienced something similar where there's public land where you can just go hunt. There's no tags there even. You just go out and you the only cost is getting there, which is amazing, and maybe a guide if you don't know the area, and then there's private land hunts too. But let's just say we're lucky to live in countries that have open space. Some places don't. We visited Japan early this year. There's so many people there. Hunting might be an opportunity, but it doesn't come as easy as it comes for us.
No, we've been really fortunate that way, that it's fairly easy for us. Of course, you need to either own land or know the right people or pay for it, but it's at a cost that's not unbearable. So I think that's great.
Well, let's bring it into land there. It's been great to be here in Sweden. I've thoroughly enjoyed hunting here, and you guys can check out the episode that we
the global hunting series.
It was really fun. We took out Petter, who's a relatively new employee here at Element Optics, and we spent some time testing some new products, and had a great time just hanging out with each other and getting to know each other a bit better, like we always do.
Every time we see each other, since we live on different continents, we don't get to see each other every day. So it's good to get together and do a hunt, and then share the experience, and then also get to test all the products. It's great.
Absolutely. So next time you pick up an Element Optics product, know that it's gone through some rigorous testing all over the world, in different environments, different styles of hunting, built for different needs. And we definitely pride ourselves in having a diverse background
Yeah.
Like we culturally very different, but I think when you find people who have a passion for hunting and shooting, there's so much in common
Yeah.
that it makes it so easy to get along, and it's always interesting learning from other people and not just being stuck in a bubble of what you think hunting is or what you think
Yeah,
a
exactly.
good rifle or a good scope is.
Yeah.
I've
And
learned
then get
over
to
the last few
experience.
years, I've learned over the last few years that a good scope might be something totally different to what is good for my purposes.
Yeah.
Just because it's different to what I need doesn't mean it's not a good scope.
Yeah.
And there's something about appreciating good engineering and good design for something, even if it's not what you need.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Thank you for listening or watching. As always, you can follow us on all our social media platforms for more.
Yep.
Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching on YouTube for more of these discussions, for product overviews, hunting episodes. For us, it's not just about like selling stuff. It's about making memories and enjoying the products that we make, and providing, quality entertainment and education, and just getting the global shooting and hunting
community
sport growing and like on the same page, and encouraging you to get out, enjoy some fresh air, get the legs working, and go and have some fun.
Meet your friends at the range or just whatever.
Exactly. We'll catch you guys next time.